Fun fact, Greg Schiano briefly accepted the head coaching job at Michigan after Lloyd Carr retired before turning it down a few hours later to keep his job at Rutgers. And then Rich Rod happened, Brady Hoke happened, and now Greg Schiano is back at Rutgers after he went to Tampa Bay, got fired from there, was the defensive coordinator at Ohio State, and that's how he worked his way back to Rutgers. Rich Rod is now the head coach in an FCS school. Brady Hoke coaches San Diego State. And Michigan now has Jim Harbaugh, who has never lost to Rutgers. Him and Greg Schiano, though, when matching up, there's never been a blowout between them in Michigan versus Rutgers history, of course. Greg Schiano has played Michigan closely over the past 2 seasons, losing in 3 overtimes to Michigan in 2020, and losing by single digits to last year's Big Ten championship caliber Michigan team. You know, the 12-2 team who went to the playoffs, beat Ohio State by 15. That same squad only beat Rutgers by 7. And yeah, part of that is due to how Michigan played earlier in the year versus the end of the year. Michigan is a team that certainly was peaking closer to the end of the year than they were at the beginning of the season. Much different team from start to finish. But I bring up this point to say Michigan's 8-0. They're 5-0 in conference. They've been undefeated in the months of September and October. All the odds are stacked in Michigan's favor to be 11-0. 11-0 entering Columbus. It is more likely, according to statistics, power rankings, and everyone's own opinion, that Michigan is more likely to win the Big Ten than they are at going 10-2 in the regular season, losing to Ohio State and another team between Illinois, Nebraska, and Rutgers. There's more likelihood that Michigan is 13-0 than there is that Michigan is 10-2. And I excuse the 12-1 fact, because if Michigan loses to someone like Illinois, Rutgers, or Nebraska and somehow beats Ohio State and wins Indy, that's more likely to be fantasy or an alternate reality than actual reality. But that would be insane and, as a Michigan fan, kind of funny if it was to transpire in that way. But what I'm saying is, nothing's guaranteed. And after a win against Michigan State, Michigan beating their in-state rival for the first time since 2019, it was definitely an emotionally charged win. Michigan didn't play well, but they celebrated it like they won a huge game. And the events that transpired afterward in the tunnel, I do not know what Michigan's mental status is. And I don't know how closely they will be looking at Rutgers. Rutgers, however, just broke a long time losing streak against Big Ten opponents at home by beating Indiana the other day. So at 4-4, Rutgers, they're going to be fighting for bowl game eligibility, and it's looking less and less likely that they will achieve that. And Michigan here is fighting for a college football playoff spot. They're fighting to beat Ohio State again, win the Big Ten again. They're fighting for a national championship. But nothing is guaranteed. As I've already said, Michigan beating Rutgers is not guaranteed. This game takes place at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and it will air on ABC. Rutgers is also coming off a shutout loss to Minnesota. They were 4-3 entering that game. Minnesota was also 4-3, and Minnesota and Mohamed Ibrahim just destroyed them, breaking a 3-game losing streak. Michigan is 8-0. They have an 8-game win streak dating back to the beginning of the season, as they lost to Georgia to conclude last season. And Michigan and Rutgers, they're two totally different teams. It's reflected in the fact that Michigan has the advantage by raw talent and performance at every position on and off the field. Michigan's given a 95.2% chance to win, according to ESPN's FPI. Most of that 5% chance comes from the fact that this is a road game. That's where most of that comes from, the fact that this is a road game. Rutgers allows 22.5 points per game. They only score 20.1 points per game. Their offense is disgusting. There is really no other word besides maybe an atrocity or a war crime that could describe how bad Rutgers' offense is. They fired their OC, Sean Gleason, a few weeks ago. Rutgers' defense and special teams, though, have always been the strength of their teams, and I expect them to fully show up Saturday night. I completely expect that. Nonetheless, Michigan's favored by 26 points. They're favored minus 10,000 on the money line. Michigan would be looking for its 7th straight win over Rutgers. Their only loss to Rutgers coming in 2014 in the final year of the Brady Hoke era, which he himself is struggling at San Diego State. Anyway, I digress. Michigan versus Rutgers. I look at this game, and as a Michigan fan, Michigan should come in here. They should boat race Rutgers, move to 9-0, do the same thing with Nebraska the following week. They should beat Illinois in what will probably be a double-digit win, but it will be a struggle for a half because I think Illinois' defense would make any fan base frustrated for a half of football before the likes of Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, or Michigan would eventually out-talent Illinois, get a few big plays, and win. Michigan should totally be 11-0 entering Columbus. The issue with me is how Rutgers has played Michigan close. They've been efficient against Michigan over the past 2 years, and the past 2 years are Greg Schiano's first 2 years of his second stint at Rutgers. It's a night game, and again, it's just there's something in my gut that tells me that this game isn't as easy as it looks. Nebraska's totally busted. Illinois is a home game. Illinois has 7 wins, only 1 loss. I don't think Michigan's going to overlook them, even if Illinois gets an additional loss before the Michigan game, because they've won too many games. Brett Bielema's squad has shown this year they can beat ranked opponents. They showed the same thing last year. And similarly to Rutgers, I mean, they're both older style football teams, much like Michigan. And those are the teams that in 2021 matched up with us the best, the older school style football teams, the modern ones, mostly Ohio State, in my opinion, not so much. Michigan State was more modern than they were in the Mark D'Antonio era, but, teams that ran the football, that were physical on defense, or they had good defensive game plans, even with drastically inferior talent, they often would match up with Michigan the best. Often. Last year. And throughout the Jim Harbaugh era. Here, Rutgers is a team that is physical on defense. They're good on special teams. Adam Korsak is one of the best punters in the nation. Their kicking game isn't the greatest, but their defense, they have a non-existent offense, and their defense holds opponents to 22.5 points per game, and that's including them facing off against Ohio State, which is one of the best, if not the best, offenses in the country. So there's something about this game that just doesn't sit well in my stomach. But Michigan, they're given a 95.2% chance to win. They're favored by nearly 30 points. It's a road game at night. The road game at night just widens the probability. It widens the possibility for different results, in my opinion. It could strengthen Rutgers, give them a boost that you don't always have when you don't have a night game. It could also bring Michigan's attention to this game. If it'd be a noon kickoff, Michigan favored by the same amount of points, you could kind of see Michigan walking in there and just expecting to roll over it. But a night game always brings some kind of hype and attention. It did it for Rutgers when they played Nebraska on a Friday night. It wasn't the sellout that it was advertised to be, but the presence of home field advantage was there, and Rutgers played that game very hard despite losing. Michigan is ranked number 4 in ESPN's FPI. They're the 14th most talented team, and they're the 5th most efficient college football team. Rutgers, by comparison, is 89th in FPI. They're the 58th most talented team, and they're the 87th most efficient college football team. So, huge talent discrepancy. huge between these two teams, and that's always been the case ever since Rutgers joined the Big Ten. It's been one of their worst problems. They're not, they were not ever a football school. Greg Schiano, in the 2000s, he brought them unprecedented success. And they were a football school when college football was invented. They won a few national championships, but since then, except for a few years under Greg Schiano, they've been absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. He had 5 seasons of 9 wins or more. One season where they went 11-2, and they were 12th in the coaches poll and AP poll to finish the season with a win in the Texas Bowl. Greg Schiano knows what he's doing at Rutgers, but even with his head coaching genius in the 2000s, they couldn't get much going. They couldn't always sustain success. They still had losing seasons sandwiched in between their winning seasons, and that was in the Big East, where Rutgers was more toward the middle or below average level of the playing field, whereas now they're at nearly the complete bottom. Even a team like Minnesota, even teams like Iowa, even plenty of the Big Ten West schools have more total team talent, according to 24/7 Sports, than Rutgers does. So a huge talent disadvantage for Rutgers here, and Michigan in general is more efficient at every position, minus special teams. And both of those teams are close in caliber, and Michigan has the better kicker with Jake Moody. They have the inferior punter in Brad Robbins, but they just have the more proven special teams unit overall. Players to watch. Now, Greg Schiano isn't a player, but I'm going to explain this. Basically in the sense of I don't see how any individual Rutgers player can make enough of a difference for Rutgers to win. That's how bad Rutgers is. And it would have been the same thing for Indiana. The same thing for Indiana had I made a preview video on that game. And I didn't make a preview video for the Indiana game. So anyway, for Michigan, it's quarterback J.J. McCarthy. And I think this is the case not because, they need him to do well to win. You can see where I'm already going with this in the prediction element. But J.J. McCarthy needs to get open practice. He did not look good against Michigan State. He didn't look good against Penn State. He hasn't had a good game since the Indiana game. The Indiana game, he really had to throw the football because Indiana did a better job, much better than Penn State at limiting the run. And they did a better job than Michigan State did at keeping Michigan out of the red zone and out of field goal range. They honestly did. So, J.J. McCarthy, he hasn't had a good game in the passing element since nearly a month ago. It's time to get him some reps because he's going to have to pass against Ohio State. No, Ohio State's defense isn't the caliber of defense that J.J. McCarthy faces in practice. I fully think after that Penn State game, and even after the Michigan State game, like comparing multiple teams that Ohio State has faced to ones that Michigan has faced, along with, different metrics like allowed points per game, efficiency metrics actually favor Ohio State on defense. So there is an argument that Ohio State has the better defense, but Michigan allows less yards, they allow less points, their defense is more suffocating, they don't have as good of an offense that Ohio State does, so Michigan's defense has to do more than Ohio State's defense does to win football games, and yet they allow less yards and less points per game. Michigan, I think, has more total sacks than Ohio State does. So I look at Michigan's offense, and their defense is good. But if they want to further solidify their chances, if they want to increase their stock worth, their value, and give themselves a better opportunity to beat the Buckeyes and win the Big Ten, and hopefully win the national title, you got to get J.J. McCarthy reps. He's 89th in passing yards, with only 1,464 passing yards. He only has 10 passing touchdowns, 2 interceptions, a 79.1 QBR. He has 197 rushing yards, 5.6 yards per carry, 1 rushing touchdown, and he has a 164.5 passer rating, which is, it's a pretty good passer rating. It's one of the better passer ratings in the Big Ten. But really what disturbs me the most is that you look at Cade McNamara's 2021 splits and statistics. J.J. McCarthy is passing it. He's passed it less times than Cade has, and probably by the end of the year, he will pass it a similar amount of times, if not less, than what Cade McNamara has passed. He might not even reach Cade's total pass numbers from 2021. He'll probably meet his passing touchdown standard, maybe his passing interception standard. He'll have more rushing yards because he has that ground element. He isn't getting enough reps. And when he is forced to, there are moments where he shows NFL potential, and that makes sense because he's a 5-star, but there are also moments where he does not look good. He's third team or honorable mention all Big Ten right now. Maybe there's an argument out there for him to be second. Maybe. But if Michigan wants to beat Ohio State, wants to win the Big Ten, wants to win the national title, J.J. McCarthy needs to solidify himself in that second team all Big Ten category. And there's no dishonor in that because C.J. Stroud is the best quarterback in the nation. So you could be second team all Big Ten and you could be the second best quarterback in the nation because C.J. Stroud exists. But J.J. McCarthy needs to play at a higher level. And I think that starts with getting in-game reps against a team that doesn't have an offense. So you're not going to be worried about them scoring on you too much. But they have a solid defense, solid special teams unit. And that can get J.J. McCarthy prepped and the passing game prepped for Ohio State. It could also give play callers the opportunity to test new things and ideas and have better play calls instead of just calling read options and runs up the middle in the red zone, which result in kicking field goals against defenses with brains. Anyway, for Rutgers, it's Greg Schiano. I do not see any other way that Rutgers wins this game without Greg Schiano having the coaching game of his life, in which case the players to watch for Rutgers are the head coach and all of the players. I don't think there's any individual player who can get attention. Like J.J. McCarthy, I have him as a player to watch just to see how he does, see if he takes a step forward in the passing realm, if he gets passing reps. For Rutgers, maybe Gavin Wimsatt for the same thing, like put in the younger player with more raw talent to get him better trained. But if Rutgers does want to pull an upset here, and seeing that Greg Schiano, I think, wants to and needs to get to bowl eligibility to have some job security, I think Greg Schiano has this game circled. He's played Michigan close the last 2 years. If he can coach his butt off, get him and his team to play an A-plus level and catch Michigan napping, I'd give him all the credit. I'd give him all the credit if Rutgers was to play another close game or somehow win. But I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think Michigan's going to have that 79 or 78-0 win that they had in 2016. Maybe they will, but this Rutgers team is so much better than that 2016 Rutgers squad, which was probably one of the worst teams ever in college football. And this Michigan team also has a tendency to stop scoring, like to completely stop scoring once they reach close to or a little above 50 points. The Wolverines will have to take active passing reps, not to win, but to better prepare themselves for the future. They have to take active passing reps. Steve Deace from the Michigan podcast posted something on Twitter that said he basically hopes that Greg Schiano sells out completely against the run and forces Michigan to take active passing reps. And I think Rutgers' defense will do that. They'll sell out against the run. I just don't think it will succeed. Michigan's offensive line is better than they were last year, and their run game is better than last year. Even if the bland play calling continues, I don't think any team is going to be able to completely shut down Michigan's run game this year, like some teams were able to do last year, like Georgia and Rutgers, Michigan State even in 2021 shut down Michigan's run game. And as a side note, that's been the main difference for Michigan State's defense this year. Their secondary hasn't improved at all, but their run defense has regressed, and that has really been the worst part of their defense, mainly because of injuries, is the regression in the run defense. Because if you have a terrible secondary or terrible run defense, but the other side of the coin is great, you can force teams to be one-dimensional, and that will create turnovers. That'll certainly create turnovers and opportunities for the other team to make mistakes. Michigan will eventually wear Rutgers down. Blake Corum will continue to add rushing touchdowns. I expect for him more than 150 rushing yards, probably 2 rushing touchdowns, given the fact that Michigan in a lot of these games, I hope they'll take active passing reps, and I think that there will be opportunities for McCarthy to do so, but I'm more inclined to think that Michigan is just going to continue to do what they're doing. They're going to continue to run the football. They're going to come into this game, into SHI Stadium, and treat this like a business trip, winning a shutout 48-0 because Rutgers has no offense. They'll go home 9-0, prep for Nebraska, Illinois, and Ohio State. And this will be Michigan's 7th straight win. Rutgers' offense, as I already stated, is an absolute disaster. The defense will sell out against the run and fail. Rutgers will fall to 4-5. Michigan will rise to 9-0. And that is all I have to say in this video. If you liked it, please make sure to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, click the notification bell, and comment your thoughts on this video down in the comment section below. And if you're listening via Spotify, make sure to follow the channel. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you around. Bye.